There's a perplexing element in the musical that's been carefully neglected by the fan base. Unlike the chandelier, proscenium, curtains, or even the Hannibal elephant, the Mirror Bride has no admirers. Really, there's not much to be found about her in Maria Bjornsson's notes or interviews, and she's not talked about and barely acknowledged in any behind the scenes or discussions about developing the musical. And her moment on stage is so brief and strange, we'd rather just forget she exists and get on with the unmasking scene instead of dwell on what she could tell us. It's been suggested she could have been a hypnotic hallucination on the part of Christine when she's faced with her own reflection, but that theory doesn't hold up because it would suggest the Phantom was unveiling a broken mirror at the end of his serenade, which makes no sense, or it was an intact mirror and she hallucinated both the mannequin and that it was broken for some reason, and then that the bride lunges toward her as well. She'd also have to fabricate the doll in repose for the unmasking scene, and then for the end as well, as the Phantom tosses it off of his chair. The theory doesn't hold up. Any way we slice it, we've got to face the unnerving truth that the lonely Phantom has a replica of Christine in his lair, and that it had been given hinges to bend forward for an embrace. What does this mean for him? Obviously, an obsession with Christine is apparent, but not Christine in plain clothes, not Christine as a person, but as his bride, to become part of him. She is his goal. She can redeem the distorted parts of himself if she joins with him. The missing piece to his lifeblood, his music. Instead of looking at himself in the mirror, he sees it instead as a doorway, framing the object of his worship, Christine. And the only way he can achieve her is to deny the ugly truth about himself. To face it is not an option while Christine exists. Every human being rejected him for his deformity, including his own mother. It's inconceivable to him that she could love him in spite of it. The broken mirror, at least to me, really reveals more than the mannequin does, because she could have just been standing there by herself, but she's behind a broken mirror instead. It tells us the Phantom is through with knowing himself, embracing his impulses, and giving full throttle effort to obtain Christine no matter what it takes, even at the expense of his own humanity. I can picture him before the mirror, admiring the bride behind the glass, and realizing that his own reflection distorts her image in a hideous way, and breaks it to make a doorway. The exact inverted scenario plays out in the dressing room, and yet again he removes the glass to obtain her. As far as I can tell, the musical is the first time she appears in the Phantom's rich history, and she's obviously not just something spooky to add a macabre element to the Phantom's lair. She has a very practical part to play that becomes glaringly obvious in her absence. Without her, Christine just randomly faints, and the crescendo for the song never really happens, and leaves it all very flat and odd. For those of you who have seen part 1 of my musical breakdown, the mythological origins, you already know the ancient myth that this moment is harkening back to. Pygmalion was a talented Greek sculptor in the ancient world. After becoming disgusted by some local prostitutes, he lost all interest in women and avoided their company completely. He saw women as flawed creatures and vowed never to waste any moment of his life with them. He dedicated himself to his work, and ironically, the masterpiece of his life was a statue of a woman carved in stone he named Galatea. Perhaps he sought to correct in marble the flaws he saw in women of flesh and blood. The myth relates these words: "It appeared in truth a perfect virgin with the grace of life, but the expression of such modesty all motion was restrained, and so his art concealed his art." Pygmalion worked so long and with such inspiration on the statue of Galatea that it became more beautiful than any woman that had ever lived. As he finished the statue's features, they became exquisitely lifelike and striking in their beauty, and he found himself applying the strokes of hammer and chisel with increasing affection. When his chisel finally stopped ringing, there stood before him a woman of such perfection that Pygmalion, who had professed his disdain of all females, fell deeply in love. He would caress and kiss the stone sculpture every day. Though she appeared more beautiful naked, he clothes her and carefully places her on a bed with expensive pillows and fine sheets. What irony that he who had scorned women should fall for a woman who could never love him in return. Such a passion could not go unnoticed by the goddess of love, Aphrodite. She took pity on the young man, and when he entered his studio one day, he found the cold stone sculpture was soft to the touch and warm. Upon kissing it, he found Galatea had been given life by the goddess. Fearing he may be mistaken, again and again, with a lover's ardor, he touches the object of his hopes, astounded that she'd come to life. He lifts up both of his hands to feel the work, and wonders if it can be ivory, because it seems to him more truly flesh. His mind refusing to conceive of it as ivory, he kisses it, and feels his kisses are returned. And speaking love, he caresses it with loving hands that seem to make an impress on the parts they touch, so real that he fears he then may bruise her by his eager pressing. Galatea and Pygmalion are wed and live happily ever after. In our story, the Phantom sculpts Christine from an ordinary orphan, part of the ensemble of girls living under the roof of the Paris Opera. He shapes her voice to elevate her above her peers, the pinnacle of feminine divinity, a prima donna soprano on the world stage. From a marble block to living flesh. Through instructing her to sing from a young age, she blossoms into beauty and prowess. And once his work of sculpting her is nearing its end, the static mannequin in his lair moves with life, and Christine becomes the masterpiece instead, her affection being the last element required to make the mythology complete and finalize his work. I think The Mirror Bride makes us uncomfortable because we see too much of the phantom in ourselves. We too often form idols and relationships of people in our minds. We deny the humans around us free will and often ignore or willfully blind ourselves to the truth and prefer the cheap, artificial alternative we have complete control over instead. The phantom embodies a lot of the undesirable qualities of humanity, and if we care to learn, he can instruct us in understanding ourselves through him and his Galatea.